Welcome to Trace Your Future with Refiloe. This week, talking about the soft skills gap. We have Prof Musawenkosi in studio, as well as Thamsanqa, who is the founder of SA Council for Graduates, who will elaborate on us what his experience is when he speaks to graduates. Now, tell us about your organization and what was the reason behind founding the SA Council for Graduates, Thamsanqa.
Thank you, Refiloe, and congratulations to you and Trace for this very important work. The South African Council for Graduates was established exactly 10 years ago on this day, the 15th of August.
Wow.
We're very delighted to have met you and that we are able then to address critical areas that we believed at the time, even today, they're still relevant, making sure that graduates, students from colleges and universities are prepared to enter the world of work. When we began, you commenced by saying that what we call soft skills. At the South African Council for Graduates, we call them essential skills. These are essentials because they prepare young people to be able to enter the world of work knowing exactly what is expected of them. So we are solving two problems. The first problem is a problem of graduate unemployability. The second problem is a problem of lack of entrepreneurial viability. So we saw it fit way back then to say we need to help our young people by working with universities, colleges, employers. So we have a database of employers. We also have a database of unemployed graduates, which we convert. And thanks to many sector education and training authorities, your bank SETA, your LG SETA, Energy and Water SETA, CAT SETA, and many others who have given us funding to ensure that we pay the stipends on a monthly basis for these young people to enter the world of work, and of course, to give them what we call career readiness programs, where we have a number of topics that which we address to help these graduates to have winning resumes, prepare for job interviews, and also to make sure that they sustain their internship and come up with gainful employment.
I hear that, and that's very necessary work, Thamsanqa, because for some reason it is not prioritized in formal schooling. Do you have a reason why that is? What do you think that is?
I think we are going through a transitionary period, and we can all agree that there has been more push for, let's say, your decolonized education and just other aspects of teaching as we know it and learning, whereby it is now more than ever important that graduates exit the formal education system not only with, book smart, right, but also having other facets of, their being having been edified as well. And as we've been speaking about, those essential or soft skills are absolutely necessary, because at the end of the day, there's a saying I like. It goes, talent will take you where only character can keep you. And that's the challenge we're having with so many young people today. They are smart, they are capable, but when they get into the workplace, their character is not able to sustain their intellect.
And whose responsibility do you think that falls on? Because at the time you're graduating, it's early 20s, so the character can't be formed at that moment. I mean, it should be a long time coming, sort of like a situation where when you leave school and ready for employ, at least the character should be formed, no?
Absolutely. And when you mentioned that, you're opening up a whole other can of worms, because socially there's so much that goes into the development of a human being, and starting obviously in the home, because that is the first education atmosphere or education ground, and the early education as well, what we would call either preschool, primary school, or elementary. Those stages are also critical in forming the character of, what will eventually become the graduate, who will be seeking employment. And so it is important that all these parties work together to ensure that this person develops all the skills that they need. other than that, you end up with a frustrated individual, and you also end up with a frustrated community and society, because if you come to the workplace, there are expectations that you must abide by. If you haven't been nurtured in that acumen and ability to conform to different spaces, we all know the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? If you don't like how things are done in this organization, go start your own, and then have your own set of principles or values that others can follow. But it's actually such a huge skill to be able to, conform. And we're not saying lose yourself in the process, which is why, myself being specifically in the field of industrial psychology, it's important that we achieve a match between the individual and the workplace.
In the organization.
So you have no business even applying for work at a certain organization. And yes, we do understand that with high unemployment and with, economic challenges that we're facing, sometimes we end up taking whatever is available at the time. But ideally, you want to go into an organization where you're able to make the best contribution, and they're also able to reciprocally get the same from you.
And as yourself, without having to compromise a lot. Now, Thamsanqa, we are looking at a generation where the right to how I look, how I speak is reserved to me. I must enter a business space, and I understand that, but why can't I have express myself with my hair, for example, diet, whatever color I want. Or why can't, I come in at work at 9 and perhaps leave at 7, because that's more where, the time where I've defrosted since waking up. There are things calling for the corporate world to relax its standards, to make them comfortable, but there's also the rigid culture of being in a formal environment. How does one find or understand the balance between the two?
You have a very interesting question and topic. Young people are not different to how we were when we entered the corporate sector. That was 30 years ago for me. And they're different generations, and today's generation, I think they are more exposed than we were. They have much more access to various platforms. But where I think they come to a deadlock, it's really in navigating the entry into the world of work by understanding first, I like what Musa reflected to as the issues of values and principles in the workplace. Remember, the corporate sector has clients, has a branding and a specific brand to live up to. So we're not going to change that for one individual. However, should it brings about an affordability of this young person to achieve and access a different type of clientele for the company, of course we will do it. But it's got to be measured.
It's got to be a strategic decision to do so.
It's also got to be in line with the demands of our clientele. If our clients requires that perhaps, look, we've got to work at 9 to 7 p.m., so be it. And I think the corporate sector has begun, of course with COVID, we've begun to bring about relaxed ways of working. Working from home is one of them. Working from wherever you can be, as long as you can be accessible, you can be able to deliver the work you're doing, it is there. But the issue of values, I think young people need to bring themselves into the party and onto the table, because they must remember, the corporate sector, there's over 800,000 unemployed graduates.
800,000, that is alarming.
If we were then to allow Nosipo, for an example, to come in and dictate, we have a big opportunity and choice to make. We would rather go and take Tracy, if that is the name, to say Tracy is willing to bring herself into the organization, learn the ways of the organization, deliver. So what we require of young people is that come in, understand the environment, deliver, then propose a change. Not that you come in, we've not even assessed and gotten to gauge your level of delivery, your resilience level, and you just want to come and desire and demand change. It doesn't work like that.
You've got to prove that you are worth the organization changing, and that you yourself have a vision to be in the organization for a long time.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to I've done what's required of me. I got my grades, exemption, I got this qualification, I went to do honors and progressed and all that. now I'm not finding the job. How do I assess my own employability as a graduate? Because I tend to, as a young person, blame it on the unemployment rate, blame it on corporates that are very selective, blame it on nepotism or corruption. But how do I assess if I am job ready?
I think, first of all, it's in your hands as a graduate than anyone else's hands. And I think that's where as young people, we need to firstly acknowledge that no one else can prepare me as I can. We have factors, obviously, and circumstances surrounding which will contribute to my readiness. But at the end of the day, they could all come to the party. But if I haven't, then I will not be ready nor employable as a graduate. And I often say, even to the students I teach, that life is a boat of opportunities, right? But it's not about the opportunity you get, but what you make of it. There are others who do more with less, and others who do less with more. So at the end of the day, it comes back again to that character. What do you see? In whatever circumstances. We just got out of the recent pandemic, while for some, it was, this really dire circumstance or situation. A lot of individuals saw the gap in that and were able to exploit it. And that is what the type of, skills that graduates need to espouse. That how do you then break through the barriers? How do you penetrate, whatever barriers have been established to inhibit you from accessing this this working environment? And obviously we need also an enabling environment. But I think at the end of the day, it's important to first be ready yourself.
At what point, though, do I know, Thamsanqa, because I've done what's required of me, why am I not getting the job? Because sometimes you get that job or that first opportunity and somebody tells you, your communication style is a bit aggressive, and you're hearing it for the first time. You don't even know that you've been going through life and that's how you've gotten ahead. But because maybe your CV got polished and they saw that, okay, it meets what we are looking for as an organization, now we found this person. But when they're like now sitting there and practically doing the job, maybe they are technically good, right? But they've got to deal with people and that's not their strong point. So at what point do we need to be aware? One, as a graduate myself, and two, in the journey of me entering the job space, whose responsibility is it to get me at least aware that soft skills wise I've got to improve?
That's a very good point. It's an 80-20 principle. In business we call it a Pareto analysis. 80-20 simply because 80% of the requirements, of the objectives, of the task and the process falls squarely on the candidate or the student or the graduate. What is it that they need to do? You enter first year of varsity, that's an opportunity to do your what we call vacation work. All students have to go through that process because your vacation work will prepare you for what is required. Number two, it will bring you to proximity with the employer. It will allow you opportunities to network. So at South African Council for Graduates, we call networking not who you know, but who knows you. Because the more we observe you, the more we interact with you, we gauge in this person.
And we are drawn to you.
We are either drawn or expelled.
Of course.
Yes. So that is critical. So the vacation work part is critical. Secondly, you move into your second year, start attending conferences. Relationship you have with your professors, with your lecturers, very important. It took me from a technikon to a university in Australia.
Wow.
Just the network, the relationship, the way you relate to your professors, to your lecturers will take you far. So at SAGRA, we say to young people, build a lifetime of relationships with your professors, with even administrators at the university. And then the third part, as you do your third year, have what we call top 10 companies that you'd like to work for. Get to understand these, visit them, don't look for a job. Because when you visit these companies, be it you've got a project or an assignment, you use this company, you study them, you investigate who their customers are, what their products and services are. You start to build what we call a portfolio of evidence for the career that you want to pursue. So when you've asked what is it and where does it start? It starts in first year of your university.
Sure.
Not at the end, because it's too late. Then once you've done that, some universities and some programs have got what we call mandatory work integrated learning programs or work-based experience programs. Therefore, that will give you 6, 12, 18, or even 24 months into a program. That begins to teach you those communication skills, the different types of communicating with people at different levels, how to negotiate, how to also write a report. Out of the many graduates that are in our database at SAGRA, we found out majority of them do not know how to express themselves in writing. And finally, the critical part is, are you able to sell yourself? Can you sell yourself to enter into a corporate a graduate program? Because there's a difference between a vacation job, a work-based training, an internship, and a graduate program of a company. Most graduate programs pays quite good incentives. Young people will not find themselves earning 3,000, 5,000. You start at 20,000 and above in a graduate program. So that is a very competitive space, and we urge young people, we urge young professionals, if you've just come into a company, the best place to start is your supervisor, your mentor. Ask them, how do you like your work submitted to you? How often should I submit my work? Which type of methodology do you prefer that I use to submit my work? If you lose that opportunity, you'll be lost forever.
Sure, that's a lot to take away from there, and I guess I am reminded by what you said earlier, Prof, about bringing yourself into the situation or the workplace or whatever, because all the steps he's mentioned, I'm reflecting back when I was in I mean, they called it TWR in those days, and I had none of that direction or sense of goal or ambition, and he's just laid it out so clearly. I think one would have skipped many steps, right, of trying to get to an organization and make yourself stick somewhere, but had you now done the work of introspecting and aligning what you're about with the organization that you're aspiring to belong to, that would have saved, a lot of mistakes on your CV, because you see this generation of hoppers now that do 2 years here, 1 year, and 3 months here because they're looking to belong. And that's the work they do post the fact. And Thamsanqa was talking about doing it during the tertiary phase, where it's not only tertiary that you're exposing yourself to, but the networks outside. Do you think that in terms of young people, because I mean they're watching us right now, do you think we do enough to solution by ourselves, or we're always looking out for somebody to lend a helping hand, or how can I say, condition us or conscientize us to what's required, when it comes to our personal success?
That's, I guess, another challenge, that we're always looking on the outside, for solutions. And I'm always cautioning my fellow young people as well against constantly expecting, from externally, especially when there's no evidence that you have put in the work, from the inside. So how do you then expect, external forces to come and align with whatever energy you're also projecting? And that's very important. And I tell, fellow young people as well, that even this tendency to expect, from the government, right? Yes, they are there to do certain things and to create an enabling environment. That is their role and duty. But there's no guarantee that an entity, an institution, or even a person will do what they're supposed to. Think of all the parents who are supposed to take care of their children but don't. They abandon them. But we know that the role of a parent, once you bring a child into this world, you must be able to take care of them, give them opportunities however best you can, depending on what resources you have. But it's not all parents that do. So sometimes I feel it's unreasonable also as young people that we're not making an effort. You're not doing anything, but you expect the government to miraculously create opportunities for you. Have you tried to look around and see what opportunities you could also create? And it's easy to say, where do I start? I don't have anything. But there are so many stories of people who didn't have anything but were able to make something out of that. And I think the mindset is key, that it doesn't have to be something grand or, something huge to make a difference. But just as, as he mentioned, that you need to be able to sell yourself as well, right? How do I sell myself? And I tell this to my younger brother all the time. He goes to WITS, and WITS University, they're very good at inculcating that sense of pride in their students that, WITS gives you the edge. While it does, I always remind him that you will not ride on the reputation of WITS when you go to the workplace for interviews. You must sell yourself. You will find someone from another university we've never heard of, and they will beat you at the interview just by virtue of being able to sell themselves. So you need to build that. Don't look for too much external validation. Build yourself. What are you doing? And I believe that all other forces will align with your effort.
Wow. Usually my question would be, what more can be done? And I think my conversation with the two of you has given me insight on how much is being done, but always by others supporting the youth, but not so much the self-starter persona coming through. Where they are really that hungry to want to see the change or to compete against the next person. I think we are seeing a lot now because of social media, which I think a lot of the Trace Academia user and demographic are gravitating towards. They're using social media to also find themselves and create some sort of vocational work or income or any of those things. It takes me back to also understanding a lot about some of the stories I've heard from there, that these people are graduates, unemployed. But what did they do? They saw that opportunity and they are soaking it up. And as a result, now they have brand recognition and a massive following and whatever. But when you speak to this person, they sat with a degree for a couple of years, right? And nothing came of it. So I think our message of today's discussion is tantamount to that, because the person themselves needs to bring themselves forth in this topic of soft skills. And I want to ask you, Thamsanqa, what is your parting shot? If you had to sit and they are all listening, what would you say that if I can give you one piece of advice, it's this?
Thank you. I spoke about the 80%, and that 80% was more on the young person, that what is it that they need to do for themselves.
Of course.
Now there's this 20%.
Yes.
We would be not doing a favor, or we'll be doing a serious disfavor to universities and colleges if we don't address this issue. There's an issue of what we call employability of your own graduates, your own student as an alma mater. The alumni of your university or your college, how well are they doing? There are different entities that does what we call university ratings. And your Times, Newsweek, your CWR, most of them started in the US, and there's a number of them in Europe, in Asia, and even in Africa. What we've realized that out of these 4 key areas that have been reviewed or evaluated, first is the quality of the teaching staff. Then the quality of the research. Of course, the grit and I think the dynamism of the administrative staff. And fourthly is the employability of your graduates. And I've seen your VETs, your UCT is the top in the country this year, 2022, 2023. But when you look at the employability level, it is sitting at over 100 and something. So that then begins to say we've got to make a shift. It is the responsibility of your university to ensure that their products are employable. They must make sure they bring employers to the university. They must take the students to employment for exposure, for ease of access to get to understand how does the world of work functions, but also what we call professionals. South African Council for Graduates, we run what we call graduate empowerment seminars. These are programs where we bring in young people, assist them how to write a winning resume, not to just copy. If you look at people who've copied the
Copy
resume,
and
they'll
paste,
tell you,
yeah.
I succeed under pressure. So
Yeah.
what pressure have you been on?
Yeah,
to
and they
check?
put beautiful faces in the front of their CVs,
Yes.
you know.
So secondly is, how do I do the job search? Because job search is a full-time job.
Yes, of course.
How do I go about it? You know, is the advert saying, email the CV, you post the CV? Does the advert say post the CV, you email the CV? Because you're gonna miss out. Then that and lastly is, how then do you carry yourself in an interview? Do you arrive in time? Do you arrive at least 30 minutes before? If you know you're going to use the public transport, at least leave 2 hours early so that you're never late for any interview. So for us, the 20% is the role of the university, the role of the faculty, the role of government. And when we say government, every municipality, we have 257 municipalities in South Africa. We just came from a national conference that has been hosted by South African Council for Graduates and Stellenbosch University on how to empower and equip municipalities to do the role they need to be playing to empower young people to deliver good service. Then you go to the role of provincial government. In Gauteng, it's called Nasispani by the new Premier Lesufi. To what extent are graduates leveraging on those opportunities? Are they aware of them? Do they compete effectively? And finally, is the national government. We were told there's a program by the National Youth Development Agency. There's a Presidential Youth Employment Initiative. There's what we call the Youth Employment Scheme, the Harambe, who are more likely competitors to the SAGRA. But we have taken a stance that we're focusing more on engineering, on science, finance, accounting, and IT. All these other ones, credentials from students, yes, we assist them, but our focal areas is these 5. So to what extent is the National Skills Fund making its programs and services available? To what is the quality? Have we assessed the career readiness of the NYDA? Have we assessed the credibility of the programs that SAGRA, through its podcast, is offering? No. That is why we need then to work together. The Department of Employment and Labor, they've offered some very useful programs. Have we assessed them? So this is an opportunity to say, this is a 20%. How do we get the young person to first build yourself, have a goal, have a personal mission statement? Then when you have that, it will resonate because the universe is going to give you what you look for. If you have no goal, you have no plan, you'll get 0. But if you have a goal and a plan, it will work towards you to build you up.
I think I can't say more than that, Thamsanqa. And I think at this stage, if you are listening and you haven't taken away that your mindset and bringing yourself 80% to the game is what are key, then you would be at a loss. I think our viewers have learned a lot to take away. I myself have taken away something, especially about that self-starting. And then, later being met with that opportunity. But I need to see what is it that I bring to the table to, any of the opportunities that I get. And it's been quite a delight talking to you. Thank you very much for your work, both of you, in inculcating that attitude of, really a mindset that can in our youth. I've appreciated our discussion.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Download the Trace Academia app on the link below and find yourself doing some free, fun and unlimited learning. Download your certificates and upload it on LinkedIn. Then you can show everyone that you are not waiting for a job, but you're building skills in the meantime that are very relevant to your career. Thank you. That's all we have time for.